Hey guys, it's Kevin again, and this is going to be my review for Orphan Black Season 2, Episode 3, Mingling Its Own Nature with It. And holy shit, guys, this episode was amazing. It really was, because this episode, these last two episodes were great. And it just, I feel like this season, just like last season, every episode, it's getting better and better and better. And I loved everything about this episode. Everything flowed really well. Every plot went really well. Every plot direction, there were some great twists in this episode. I loved everything about this episode. I thought it was fantastic. And let's definitely get to it, because I really, really want to talk about it, because I really loved it. So, our main plot, of course, had to do with Sara, and I really got into Sara's plot tonight. I thought that they had some great stuff with Sara, they did some great stuff with her, and they're really starting to make us really enjoy Sara's character more, I think. So, Sara, Kira, and Felix, they're sleeping in a truck they stole in the middle of a field. We were all wondering, where do Sara, Felix, and Kira go next? They're sleeping in a truck, they're in the middle of a field, and when they wake up, they can't get used to the fact Mrs. S took the shot at the bird watchers. They can't believe that she did that, because they're thinking, this is Mrs. S we're talking about. We wouldn't have thought she would do something like that. And they're now, so basically there's some pretty funny scenes there with Felix and Kira, camping out. I thought it was kind of funny there. But they go to this small town, and Kira points out she knows why they got rid of the cards, and basically she's part of it, and basically, because Sara threw Felix's Visa card out the window, Kira then has to shoplift. She's forced to shoplift, and because of her shoplifting, Felix manages to steal some food. Sara's in, she's like, oh no, don't do that. And then after that, Sara's like, oh, we're not supposed to do that, right? And I'm just like, so now you tell your daughter to not shoplift after she's just done it? I'm just like, yeah, great parenting, Sara. That's literally what I was thinking in that scene, because, seriously, it's just like, alright, fine, that's how you want to parent, fine. Then, Sara wants to find an empty cabin and find the place of a possible photographer. They set Kira upstairs in a bed. She wants to know where Mrs. S is, but Sara affirms that she will be there to protect her. And, she doesn't want to tell her that Mrs. S, shot all those people. She doesn't want to tell her that because she doesn't want Kira to, like, get mixed messages or something like that, because she's been living with Mrs. S. She just doesn't want Kira to know that. So, this cop does find the truck they drove abandoned at the country line and calls in the VIN number. So, then what happens is, we see that this guy, Cal, shows up in the middle of the night. We don't know who this guy is or whatever. But he scares Felix, pins him up against the wall, really intense here. We don't know who this guy is. And before, he then realizes that Sara's there, and Cal wants them to leave. And when Kira comes down the stairs, she's wondering what's happening. She outfits her dad, and everything gets quiet, because it turns out that Cal is her father, which I thought was a really great twist. I would never have expected that. We knew that Cal was probably, Cal was one of Sara's old boyfriends, and I was kind of thinking, is Cal the guy she left for Vic? That did not come up in this episode, but I'm still kind of wondering if that was the guy she left for Vic. That's all I'm wondering. And I really enjoyed this character of Cal. I thought it was definitely a good character, in my opinion. He wants to know if the child thing is a scam. Sara says she spent a month with him and the timing is right and she's his, so he decided not to kick them out because he realizes that it's probably true. So Sara explains to Kira that she should have told her, but she didn't want Kira to have parents like she did. And a very sweet scene between them. So Felix wants to know who Cal is and why Sara came there. Cal explains he designed the micro-optics for pollinators, and now the government is using his creation to kill people. So Felix approaches Sara, upset that she always knew who Kira's dad is while he was in the dark, and he wants to be back for Alison's musical opening and says there's no place for him at the cabin. So he ends up leaving the cabin. He's got too much other stuff on his mind, so he leaves the cabin. And Cal tells Sara that it took him a while to get him over there. When a cop, Tim, shows up, visits Cal, he knows Cal, and they have a good enough relationship for Cal to talk him out of coming inside. And after their conversation, Sara decides it's not safe to leave, but she wants to stay, but Cal, she doesn't really know if she wants to trust Cal. Cal's like, oh, you still love me? And she's like, well, I did at a time. And then he ends up kissing her, and they end up having sex, and she stays. So, Yeah, that was definitely interesting. I didn't expect them to have sex, but I thought that was a pretty big thing that they had sex, because I really wasn't expecting that to happen. So Daniel shows up at the corner store that Sara and Felix robbed before. You know, he finds the corner store, posing as Peter from a government agency. Also, by the way, we still didn't have any Paul or Rachel in this episode, which I was happy about, because I do not like Paul or Rachel at this point, so I was glad they actually were not in the episode, because I don't like their characters. I just don't. We then, Daniel then gets stopped by a cop, Tim, who says he should be on his way. And what happens is then Sara and her family, they're playing cards. By the way, she doesn't want Kira to know that her and Cal end up having sex. She doesn't want Kira to know that, obviously, so she tries to hide it from Kira. She's playing cards with Cal, and Kira decides to go feed the chickens, which I knew when she went to feed the chickens, something really bad was going to happen. Daniel then shows up at the house, takes Kira by the hand, pointing a gun at Sara. Tom shows up, and, at first Sarah's, oblivious to it. And, Sara then runs out. She's like, Kira, no, because she doesn't want to lose her daughter again. And, he takes Kira by the hand, pointing a gun at Sara. Tom shows up, but Daniel shoots him dead. Sara wants Daniel to take her instead, so he makes her drive. And then the very end of the episode, which this was very interesting, she's on a car ride with Daniel. He calls DYAD to tell them they'll be there in 8 hours, but he shouldn't make Sara drive, because she crossed the red light, and they're hit by a car. By a stop sign. They have their car hit by a stop sign, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens here. Obviously, Sara should not be driving. We know that, because Sarah's not a good driver, obviously. I'm really interested in seeing what's going to happen there, but holy shit, I don't know what's going to happen now. This Cal guy, I think Cal's going to have to be the one to save Sara, because he didn't come, I think Cal's going to have to be the one to save Sara. We'll have to see what happens there, but definitely Cal's and Sarah's storyline was probably just, I thought it was really, really interesting. I was really into it this whole episode. And I definitely really appreciated Sara and Cal's storyline. I thought it was definitely really well done. The subplot in this episode had to do with Helena and Art and a whole bunch of other people. So we'll start off with Art because, he was kind of the one that started the whole thing. Helena was the subplot of this episode. So, back at the safe house, Daniel shows up and finds the bodies of Mrs. S.'s old friends, starts snooping around. Henrik shows up with Mark. They start cleaning up Mark, and he says he should have put his faith in them. Henrik says they have to work with whom they were given, Helena. Then they burnt the house and leave, and Daniel takes out a photo of Kira. That's why they had Kira before, because they want to find Kira. They want to, because they want to know why Sara was able to have a child. You're not supposed to be able to have a child, and as we know, they want to breed Helena, so they want to find out what happened here. In Art's place, Angie shows up, tells him that the clone at the hospital was gone, and, she's talking about, and I love the way they talk about Helena. She's like, oh, the girl that looked like Shakira is gone. I thought that was kind of funny, the way they said that. But Art tells her to let it go and says he'll tell the captain if she keeps pursuing it. Back in the woods, Sara wants to find an empty cabin for them to crash at, and I already read that, But Mark points out that they want to make Helena fertile, and Grace thinks he thinks too highly of her, goes to feed Helena. We see her, chowing down on food because they want her to, have a baby and everything. But she already has a family. But when she learns Thomas is gone, she says, good Brent. She says, my twin sister. Of course, she's talking about Sara, who I actually forgot was her twin sister, so that was kind of surprising for me. But then I remembered. I can be a dumbass sometimes. I will admit that. So then what happens is the Art shows up near the farm where the Prolethean sect is. He starts photographing them from a distance. He says he sees Henry and Gracie having a conversation. Gracie doesn't think Helena belongs there. Henrik asks her to close her eyes, tells her that she should hear him. And Henrik saves Helena, has a purpose, and that's what tomorrow is all about. So Henrik wakes up Helena, who, while the rest of the sect watches all of them dressed in white, they dressed Helena in white, and Henrik prays for Helena to be claimed from eternal damnation, all while Gracie doesn't look amused. Mark looks enthralled. Henrik carries her down a hallway, and I really don't know what's going to happen here. If this is going to be the guy that, I don't know, tries to breed her or whatever, I'm not really sure. But I think Helena's plot is really interesting, and as usual, everything with Helena, even though we're starting to see, a more vulnerable side of her, which I really like seeing in this season, she's still extremely creepy, because her whole plot is creepy. It's all about trying to give her a baby, and I just find it really creepy, in my opinion. I think it's definitely really well done, but it is creepy. The next thing we're going to talk about, I think the next thing I want to talk about is Alison. Alison's plot was huge in this episode. It really was big, and one of the things I loved about Alison's plot is most times Alison's plot is really silly, which it started out, but it ended up ending up really serious, and I'm really interested in seeing what's going to happen here. So, very funny scene in the beginning. We see Alison waking up Donnie by vacuuming. You know, she's very, like, aggressively vacuuming. He's worried, she's upset. He tries to have morning sex with her, but she's like, not gonna happen. She's basically like, no, not gonna happen. I am too pissed at you, and that's not gonna happen. So I thought that was pretty funny. So Alison is back at her musical. The whole big thing about Alison in this episode is more about her opening night. That's what it's more all about. And Alison's back at her musical. The director stops her mid-song, telling her to save her instrument for the audience. And when she goes to her car, you know, basically saying that she does not have a good singing voice at all. She goes to her car. Angie surprises her. She says she's from Hillsdale Drive. She locks herself out of her car, borrows Alison's phone to call her husband. She asks Alison out to coffee, but Alison gets suspicious and says no and leaves because she doesn't know if she can trust this person. So Angie comes up to Alison again. Alison tells her she knows what's up, so Angie drops her face and tells her that she should tell Angie what she knows, but Alison walks away. So then Felix, remember how I said Felix left Sarah? Well, he goes to see Alison's opening night. She's getting very drunk backstage before the show begins. I knew something bad was going to happen, and it turns out that she ends up falling off the stage. So it just got really serious there, and I think with Alison, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with her in the next episode. I'm really interested in seeing Alison's storyline, but I really loved Alison's storyline in this episode. I thought it was really intense, believe it or not. I thought it was really well done, and I was very happy that it was a little bit more serious than usual. I really do like seeing a more serious side of Alison. I do like that. So that was Alison's plot. I really liked it. Let's get to the saddest part of this episode, Cosima's plot, which really just the whole Cosima thing really made me upset. Because as we know, Cosima's dying. She's dying, and we get a little bit more information. It's not really good information. Cosima and Delphine are at the DYAD. Delphine shows Cosima this girl, Jennifer Fitzsimmons, who, of course, is another clone, who I thought we were going to end up meeting this girl, but it turns out this girl actually died 3 days ago from the same disease as Cosima, and she was the first to show symptoms right before Katja. We thought Katja was the first one to show symptoms, but it turned out that Jennifer Fitzsimmons was the one to first show symptoms, so it's not really good for Cosima. Cosima gets really worried at this, and I was really upset at this point with Cosima. They start performing they decide to perform an autopsy on this girl, and Delphine thinks the growths in her uterus were the largest, and it's possible that it's where the disease originated and why she's infertile. And Alison calls her and tells her about Angie and thinks she was just another monitor, and tells Cosima not to trust Delphine. So kind of interesting here. Cosima doesn't know she can trust Delphine. She's completely forgot that Delphine was her monitor because she really loves Delphine. She trusts Delphine at this point, and she really doesn't know what to think right now. So that whole thing was really interesting there. I'm really interested in seeing where that whole thing is going to go. I thought that was definitely pretty interesting. And, you know, when we were seeing, and then before that, by the way, Cosima was studying Jennifer's video blogs, and it was really, it was creepy, it was sad, it was really creepy. But this whole episode, this is by far the best episode of the season so far. Everything flowed really well. Everyone's plot went really well. I loved the way Sarah's plot ended this episode. My only complaint, I wanted to see at least one more scene of Alison. I feel like that whole thing, we should have seen a little bit more of that, but overall, that was fine. I'm interested in seeing what's going to happen with Alison's storyline. Will Cosima and Delphine, what's going to happen there? Because now Cosima knows not to trust Delphine. I'm interested in seeing what's going to happen. Cosima dying, I do see that as a possibility now. I think Cosima might die at the end of this season. I don't know. Can she trust Delphine? I'm not sure. Sarah, what's going to happen with Sarah? And she's probably in a car accident now. It's not going to be good there. With this guy, it's not going to be good. What about Cal? Do you think Cal and Sarah, do you think they're going to start something possibly? I do like them. I do really like them. I see a lot of chemistry between them, and I really like to see these two together because I like them together as a couple of, to be honest, I really do. I think they're a nice couple. And also, Helena. Is this guy that, took Helena, is he going to be the one to give her a baby? I'm not really sure. We'll have to see. But that's it for my review. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, fantastic episode. Loved everything about it. Let me know what you guys saw this episode. Again, no Paul, no Rachel. Actually really happy there was no Paul or Rachel, because I don't like either of those characters. But that's it for my review. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in my next video, which will be Once Upon a Time and Game of Thrones. And I'll see you guys for that tomorrow night. So, bye.